Welcome, everybody, to Shmooze Radio. That's right, you are listening to Shmooze Radio. We come to you every single Tuesday right here on 1150 a.m. KKNW. I am your host. The opening of today's show was the rendition of the profound prayer that we sing on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Avinu Malkeinu, which means our Father, our King. We turn to God and we say, God, we want you to be as loving and passionate as our parents are to us, beloved Father. But at the same time, we know that if we turn to you as the King has the power, the ability to create conviction, make things happen, and therefore we ask that God to show compassion, but also show and grant us and give us and provide for us all the things that we need in our life: health, happiness, longevity, success, and so on. And hence this prayer is such a profound prayer that's the melody has deep meaning and purpose of communicating and connecting the mind, body, and soul in connection to the proper way one prepares themselves on this very special day of Rosh Hashanah. And in just a couple of days, the day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the day when we ask God to seal us in all the good books of health, happiness, prosperity, and beyond. I wanted to take this hour to give some backdrop, deeper understanding, perspectives on what it means to ask repentance. Why do we do it? What does it mean to have a day of Yom Kippur on the calendar? Kippur comes from the word of kapara, atonement, that God turns to us and says, I grant you the wishes that you pray for. It's a day of fast. It's a day that we wear white clothes. Many of us have that custom. You wear a white shirt. Some people wear, it looks like almost like a doctor's cloak. And this is called in Hebrew or in Yiddish the kittel. And the idea is that we want to look and we act angelic. We want to be like the heavenly angels, the good ones that are clean, white, pure. And we ask of God on this very special day of Yom Kippur that we're fasting. We're not immersing in any luxury or an indulgence of life, not taking advantage of the mundane world, but it's a 5-hour fast that's fully dedicated to a higher purpose. And the more selfless we make ourselves, the more connected and bonded we are with our Creator. Of course, the response of that is that God grants us all the wishes and things that we want throughout the course of the year. You know, they say a story about a young little boy who came to the synagogue, had a very minimum Jewish education, barely was able to identify different letters from the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and so on. But he walks into the synagogue and he sees hundreds and hundreds of individuals, men, women, and children, praying, opening a prayer book, holding it in their hands, swaying, immersing themselves, bonding and connecting with the words. But this young little boy does not have that ability. What he does is he stands up in synagogue and he says as follows. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet. And he goes through all the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And he keeps on repeating them, time and time again. And he turns to God and he says, listen, unfortunately, reading the Hebrew language is not my strength. I don't know it yet. But I do want to connect with you on this very special day. So hereforth I'm giving you all the letters, and you, God, compile them into words. Make the proper sentences, the requests that I need, and so on. What a beautiful story. There's so many teachings that we can learn from this unique and special high holiday story. First of all, God understands all languages. There's no such thing that a person should stand out there and say, Hebrew is not my language. Therefore, the synagogue is a foreign and distant place for me. You can pray in any language that you're comfortable with. If it's English, if it's Hebrew, if it's, you name the language out there, many of them out there. It doesn't matter. If that's a language that you can communicate and you can open your heart and connect with, that's the language that you pray in. Hence, there are prayer books translated into every single language, primary language at least, that exists out there. That's one important lesson, a foundational key in communication and praying. Another very important component is, our rabbis tell us that in heaven, the great mystics describe this in detail. There are many, many chambers. There's a chamber of health. There's the chamber of wealth, a chamber of joy and happiness. There's a chamber of life, and so on. Every single attribute and component and idea of life that we want to engage in is sort of a different department, different chambers. Chamber of wisdom, and so on. The question is, on the day of Yom Kippur, when the gates of heaven are open, and we stand before God and we sing Avinu Malkeinu, or any other prayer that's moving or meaningful or personal request and prayer that we have, beyond what's written in the prayer books. The question is, how do we enter that chamber? How do we make sure that we, a physical human being, that perhaps maybe didn't conduct ourselves on the highest level of engagement, righteousness, and so on in the course of the year, how do we stand before God and on this very special day of Yom Kippur and say, God, grant us these wishes. Give me a good year. Give me health. Give me happiness. Give me life. How do we make sure that we have the key to open those gates to enter those chambers? How do we really make sure that we have that ability, the power to communicate and enter into those profound and directed chambers that are needed to hear our request? Every person has the power to make that. But how? To me, one of the greatest insights is one of the words and expressions we use. It's called Lev Nishbar in Hebrew, which means a broken heart. To me, the concept of a broken heart means that a person is ready for full transformation. They regret today, this moment, certain aspects of the way they were conducting themselves in the past. And they sincerely stand before their Creator and say, God, I'm ready to make that commitment again. But it's done with a leiv nishbar, a broken heart. It could be sobbing. It could be the emotional feeling of that bond and connection. The great mystics describe this idea as the master key. The master key that's able to open each and every chamber is based on the foundation of a broken heart. When a person really feels the selflessness and they put themselves fully in the Almighty's hands and they turn to God on this very special day of Yom Kippur, doesn't make a difference the language you use, even the words that come from your mouth. The foundation of all foundations, the key, the master key that gives you and grants you proper entrance is a broken heart. When you really feel that whatever I've done in the past, I'm going to try my best. There's no guarantees, but we're going to try. People ask the question all the time, how kind is God? How giving is God? Is He really such a compassionate, loving force that sustains us in life and everything? Or does He pick and choose days that He's kind and days that He's not? The answer is, we say God is Hatov v'Hametiv in Hebrew, which means He's good and He does good. He is good, the core, the essence, every detail, if we can use that term in describing God, is perfect. But it also, God is full of a hametiv, which means doing actions of goodness. Even though in times we look around the world and we see tragedy happening, and many people question this. Is there a God? How could it happen? What's going on? All these terrible tragedies going on in different parts of the world. We still believe, and this is the power of belief, that we still believe that God is good and He only does good. Our job is not to question the Creator, but our job is to believe in the Creator. And clearly, the amazing relationship that a human being has with God is different than any other higher power, so to speak. We want to use the term even of a king. If you think about it, you stand on the day of Yom Kippur, and on the day of Yom Kippur, you're not only inscribed, that took place 10 days before that, on the day of Rosh Hashanah. The big book comes out. The scribe has the quilt in his hand, and he starts writing. And that's why you pray on Rosh Hashanah, that every single request we want, make sure it's in the book. Put it on the page. Get your foot in the door. But the day of Yom Kippur has a whole different meaning. It's a day of sealing. It's a day when you close that deal. Many times people are engaged in businesses that have deals revolving weeks, months, sometimes years. And someone might hear, oh, this person's about to close a deal. Anyone with experience will say, it's not a deal until it's fully sealed. That's what Yom Kippur is all about. The Day of Atonement is a day that not only will we ask for forgiveness, but we're granted it. It's sealed. It's a done deal. Which means the next 12 months, until the next Yom Kippur, whatever you prayed for, and God granted, it's fulfilled. Now, if you could tell me, an individual of great power that will grant you your wishes before you actually show any action, there's no such thing that exists. The world we live in, the physical world, reward is based on action. The reward is based on if you put the time in. As they say in English, the harder you work, the luckier you get. What that means is there are no shortcuts. If you're going to put the time, you'll see success. For some, it happens faster, and for others, it takes a little longer. But the blessing that we stand on Yom Kippur is a time that we are granted our wishes before we do our actions. Merely on a verbal commitment. There isn't even a signed commitment. Simply by opening our mouth with a broken heart and communicating through direct channels that we have. Every person is created in the image of God, and every person has the power to build that personal relationship with their Creator. And therefore on Yom Kippur, God says, all I'm doing is waiting for you to ask what you need. I want to grant you what you want. I don't want to have any delay. But I do need to see that verbally, emotionally, you're engaged. You're part of something. You're moving. Unfortunately, there are those that Yom Kippur is another day on the calendar. It's a Saturday. Let me go do what I need to do. Go to the mall, wash my car, take a little hike. If people would understand the power of this 25-hour period that starts Friday right in twilight, and it works its way till sunset on Saturday. That 25-hour period, we open up the prayers with a beautiful rendition of the words Kol Nidrei, which means, and for many people this is the prayer they bond and connect with. We're saying really in the prayer that all the vows that I've made in the course of the year should be nullified. And of course, this is a very moving and inspiring cantorial piece. But the words itself are pretty mundane, pretty simple. Annul my vows. That's all we're asking. Any vow that I've made, make sure it doesn't exist. It's nullified, wiped off the chart. But yet so many people are so excited about that opening prayer. It's probably one of the most listened to and engaged prayers across the world, with the amount of people, the seriousness. It's that opening prayer to the Yom Kippur window. Well, the deeper interpretation is as follows. A human being, which we all are, can't go forward and ask God for requests, for personal deeds that we want to commit to in the course of the year, for our actions, and all of the things that we want, our shopping lists of ideas, wishes, desires. You can't do it until the slate is clean. So the first thing you do on the day of the opening of Yom Kippur, the eve of Yom Kippur, which is this coming Friday evening, you say to God all the vows that I have made in the course of this year. I ask of you to forgive, forget, annul, and make believe like it has never existed. You can't create a new book when there's still ink scattered over the pages. You need to clean the slate. You need to bring back that book, our personal diary that each and every year we take special encounter and promises in relationship to the book to God. And we say, God, we're going to cherish this deal that we have with you. The document of life, the document of health, the document and the commitment to be an upright citizen. And of course, the blessings of all the things we want in our life. You can't do it if there's ink that's piled from year to year. The words won't be crisp, they won't be clear. Metaphorically speaking, of course. The human being stands on the day of Yom Kippur and cleans the slate. One of the interesting ideas I always share with people, what's profound in Judaism. We call repentance in Hebrew teshuvah. Teshuvah literally means return. It's that simple. What does that mean in reality? Other religions have concepts of born again, and they have their interpretations to those expressions. But Judaism doesn't take that approach. In Judaism, every single person is born perfect to the highest level of perfection. As I mentioned, if we're created in the image of God, if God is perfect, and I want to believe we're in that image, the shadow, right? Direct reflection. We got to be perfect too. Well, if we're perfect, then the moment we come into this world, we're a jewel. We shine, we glow, we radiate with potential, with righteousness, with beauty. Unfortunately, through the course of life, Those areas that were meant to glow become revealed, covered up with layers of dirt. Dirt, metaphorically speaking, means persuasion, the world at large, steering us from side to side. Dust, dirt, and all the other things that exist in this world. The lowness clearly creates a corruption for this pristine and special soul. The concept of teshuvah, return, tells the human being a very important message. That if you could remember the day you came into this world, you were perfect. Well, through real repentance, through a real commitment of change, you have the power to return back to the way you were. You can literally rewind your whole spiritual structure to a young, fresh, new beginning. It's not born again that it's a new identity. It's the same person. It's transformation. It's cleaning the slate. It's making that person begin to realize that every single year, or whenever I feel, through deep immersion and commitment, you can make that change. It's that simple. The actions are not simple to do it, but the concept of the transformation to perfection, each and every person can reach that level. That's what we ask for on the day of Yom Kippur. All the prayers are structured in a way to engage us in such a dialogue, to allow us on one hand relate to God as a heavenly king, reverence, the awareness of what it means of the power of God, the governance of God, how God controls, how the past, present, and future, only to God He has that ability to transcend. But as humans, there is a past, there is a present, and there is a future. And therefore the past, we say, whatever we've done, let's clean that slate. We live today in the present. And of course we hope to a better future. We commit ourselves to a new future. A new future, a new time in life when the human being is able to say, everything that I look towards, my future will be in a very, very meaningful way. Simply because I sincerely want to change my actions. Yom Kippur is such a profound day that there is no such thing that a person should say, I'm too distant. I'm too far from this idea. I have lost my chance. I would like it in theory, but where do I begin? You know, it's interesting, there's a beautiful statement that says, in relationship to our Creator, how we communicate with God, the expression is, from the depth I call to you, God. And what people don't begin to understand is that because God is compassionate and giving and loving and everything else, God simply waits for the human being to show up. All you got to do is show up. When you show up and you say, hey, I want to make it to the list. I'm sincere about this. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you're doing this with a broken heart. Then God has no choice. Whatever those advocates, the positive ones, and those that angels that are saying, oh no, this person doesn't deserve that. God says, I don't care. Today is the day of atonement. He or she showed up. He or she means it seriously. And therefore, I definitely will grant them their wishes. You know, it's ironic when you think about this from a certain perspective. Most of us go through life without much change, which means we sort of hover year after year, day after day. And it's usually 4 or 5 times in a person's life. It's called life cycle events. A birth of a child, a wedding, a passing of a parent, a passing of a loved one. Whatever it may be, these moments in life, when a person goes through that experience, they're the most vulnerable. They begin to rethink certain aspects of life, things that are valuable, things that have purpose, things that have direct impact, areas that they want to focus on. They engage in conversations that would never normally take place. But by these life cycle events, I like to use the term people become, on at least a veneer level, more spiritual, and some way deeper. And the reason is because your life was jolted. You were walking and all of a sudden, you paused. And it's the pause of life. It's the moment when you relax and you look around and you say what's important, what's valuable, what's meaningful. Where do I want to go? Where am I heading? It's those meaningful moments that you've set as a goal. The day you want to graduate, the day again a child is born, whatever it may be. Those moments when you look back and you say, wow. And sometimes we as friends of those individuals say, you know, you've changed. You're a different person. And the person will say, of course I've changed. You know what kind of events occurred in my life? When a person goes through a tragic health issue, things that they thought in their life were so valuable and so important, all of a sudden are meaningless, zero value. They're willing to give it all up. Just give me back my health. You see this time in and time again. People that have all the mundane needs, and all of a sudden, their health is on the line. They'll trade it for anything. I can't tell you how many individuals have told me this year, Rabbi, the most important blessing I want you to give me is health. You have those that, to them, that's a very sensitive issue. Either they have family members, or they themselves have been in a moment of scare, or they have dear friends. And you ask yourself, wait a second. Why are you waiting to be hit by a truck, so to speak, when you have the power that's given to you And that's what Yom Kippur is. You don't have to wait for a tragic event or a moment of transformation, a loss, or God forbid, a health issue, or the moment of joyous idea at times, a wedding day. But every single year, Yom Kippur comes. Every single year, you have the power to stand before God and say, clean my slate and give me and grant me and give those wishes that I deserve. Or I don't deserve, but I want them. And because you're compassionate and you're giving, I'm sure you're going to deliver. This is something that I don't believe enough people put into a proper perspective. And to them, Yom Kippur is almost a day of annoyance. Fasting. Kidding me? What do I got to do that for? Praying a whole day. Why do I got to do that? My grandparents did that. That was their way of life. My great-grandparents. My father, my mother. Not for me. We're living in new times. It's a new lifestyle. Stop with this ancient tradition. It's absurd, this concept of prayer. Of course, that's the easy way out. But you know something? It's like telling a person, one of the greatest sages in Jewish history was an individual by the name of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was a very, very unique rabbi in many different ways, but first and foremost, his journey, his commitment and dedication to the teachings and wisdom of Torah. God's wisdom started at a very, you wouldn't say at such a young age, 40 years old is when he first started learning the Hebrew alphabet and mastering the teachings and the wisdom of God. Until then, he was a simple shepherd. And the story goes that every day he would take his flock of sheep to the water. And as these herds would make their way, he noticed there was a big pillar, a boulder, and this huge stone had a cavity within the stone. And there was water that was seeping through this cavity. And he analyzed it day after day. And he said, how is this possible? In the middle of this huge boulder, a humongous rock, a huge stone, there should be such soft water that it penetrates and flows alongside the stone. And he said to himself, this is the analogy of his life. He said, you know what? I'm 40 years old. I've never engaged in Jewish wisdom. But Torah, God's wisdom is soft. It's tangible. It flows like water, which means it's accessible on every single level. There's no such thing that a person says, it's out of my reach, because it keeps on flowing to the lowest level. He said, if I use that analogy in my own life, and I keep on studying Torah, which is compared to water, day after day, week after week, year after year, it will begin to penetrate the stone, so to speak, meaning himself, and create that cavity, that flow, that immersion, as he became the greatest of all times, with over 24,000 disciples. He used to have a very private and hidden study session with one of the Roman emperors. And you could only imagine, at that time, it was forbidden to study any other philosophy. So studying Torah was clearly forbidden. But this Roman emperor loved it and enjoyed it and appreciated the wisdom. And he turned to Rabbi Akiva and he said, you know, if God forbid you're caught and people learn about this secret that you're studying, you will be executed. And he turned to this Roman emperor and he explained to him with a parable as follows. He says there was a fox that one time leaned into the river. Standing on the bay, he leans over and he says, my dear fish, I'm standing here on shore and I see further down the stream there are fishermen with large nets that will catch you the moment the water takes you downstream. And therefore, the fox is known to be one of the slyest animals. Come out onto dry land, and I will help you navigate to safety. The fish turned to the fox and says, Fox, fox, you call yourself sly. You call yourself the wisest amongst all creations. But wait a second. Do you realize who I am? I'm a fish. The moment I leave the water, yes, you might be able to help me navigate. But as a fish, it will be impossible for me to survive. This is the parable, and the lesson is quite clear. In Judaism, we believe that a Jewish person cannot live without the wisdom, the teachings, the actions, the profound messages of what Torah offers. Just like we cannot live without nourishment, without food, without water. Just like a fish cannot live without water. So too, the Jewish nation needs to be constantly immersed and engaged in the power and the wisdom of God. That's the day of Yom Kippur. It's a new day. It's a new year. It's a new beginning. The way we celebrate the New Year's is not only making resolutions, but it's about immersing ourselves in transformation. Acknowledging the past and promising for a new future. And the ironic thing is, you might think that by now God might be fooled. Every single year we come, we show up, we pull out our shopping lists, and we say, God, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Grant us all these great wishes. And God does. Year after year we come back. We make our mistakes, and God keeps on granting us wishes. And we say to ourselves, what's going on here? Did we fool God? Did we find the loophole? And the answer is very simple. On the day of Yom Kippur, if we stand with sincerity, with meaning, with conviction, and we really believe in what we're saying, to be granted a great year, we will. God understands we're human beings. We mess up. As I mentioned, there are many influences that exist out there. But I do think, on a very, very personal level, there is nothing that stands before the will of the human being. So many people want health. So many people want peace in the world, safety in the world. We live in a time that people suffer with depression, sadness, melancholy. They are just simply every day in a certain mindset. And they're looking for ways to leave that behind. Remove themselves. Become free of those actions. The overbearing pressure of life. And we turn to this medication. And then we lay on this couch. And we turn and we ask and we try. There is a way to rise above to some degree. And that is what Yom Kippur is about. When we show that commitment, when we show God that connection that we're ready to change, and we say to God, wait a second, I don't want to be a depressed human being. I want to be full of joy. I want to be a happy human being. I want to radiate joy and happiness. I want others to sort of engage and be inspired by my life. I want to be a leader. I want to have the influence. That's what Yom Kippur is about. We turn to God and we say, all these things that we want, we know we're really in your hands. It's all in your hands. If you want, you provide life, and of course the opposite as well. Therefore, please grant us a year of wishes, of celebration, of happiness, of meaning and purpose, and so on. And this is something that I hope people take to heart. As I spent this past hour analyzing and discussing the uniqueness of what Yom Kippur is about and how you can make it personal, you can make it meaningful, and most important, I want to wish each and every one of you a life of joy, a life of happiness, filled with meaning and purpose, abundance of wealth, and most of all, beyond all that, each and every one of us should bless each other with a meaningful, sweet, and delicious year. You're listening to Shmooze Radio with Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky, wishing you a real blessed Shana Tova, a happy and sweet New Year.